Good morning, Dana.
Good morning, Tom. How are you today?
It's good, especially when I start the recording before we start our thing, right?
Always very good. The beautiful birch trees behind you must have distracted you. Very
They
nice.
did. They did. This is a lake in Colorado
Yes,
taken, I think it was last week, and I think if we watched it this week, those things might be on the ground. The leaves might be on the ground from all the snow they've had.
could be. Could be.
So, we're talking value exchange, and this is in reaction to watching as we do, we watch what's going on in the world and specifically as it applies to leadership and business. And we're saying, that it's probably time for all of us to take a reckoning and say to ourselves, okay, what's the point? What are we doing here? And why are we doing it? Because conditions are rapidly changing and we need to respond to those conditions. We need to observe them. So your comment back to me was, look, it's time to go back to the fundamental of the radar screen and the value exchange, so that we're clear, all of us are clear on how we observe what's going on, and then how do we deal with that. So instead of me taking it, I'll let you take and introduce the subject a little bit in more detail.
Okay. It all starts with the shift from the industrial age to the digital age, which we talk about.
So,
And
Deirdre, that's going back a little bit further than I was thinking.
I'll get quickly to our radars.
Oh, okay, 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 okay. I thought maybe you're going to start with Aristotle or something.
No, 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 no. Although I'd always start with Aristotle. But the whole idea is that business today is different from the way business was even as recently as 15 years ago. And the differences in all of the emerging technologies, the new ways of doing business, the importance of ecosystems and marketplaces. The company is no longer the main decider. The company has to operate within context. And this is a major shift in thinking for leaders. But meanwhile, you and I, who read as much business literature as anyone out there, are not seeing that the writers, the journalists, and the academic journals and so forth are keeping up with this shift in focus. Or giving leaders the guidance they need on how to operate in this new digital age. So, our response to that is to start to come out with some basic definitions and then start to create some tools. And I'll come back to the tools we've created toward the end of our conversation. But we start with a very basic definition, which is the game. What's the game being played out there? And I like to think about it as a chessboard on which all of the different actors in your business ecosystem are making moves, and you need to be aware of it. You need to analyze the moves, and you have to decide what moves you will make within context of the chessboard, anticipating that the other players on the chessboard will then make moves back again. And one of the ways we help leaders organize their thinking about this is through our radar screen, which ties in directly with our theme of navigating the now. Tom, do you want to pull up the radar screen just quickly so we can remind our viewers what we're talking about here? You can see on our radar screen, we've listed the basics of what a leader has to have in mind as they operate and think their way through leading in the digital age. It starts with the mindset of a leader, someone who's done the work and keeps up with the literature, keeps up with what's going on in the marketplace, the industry, and so forth and so forth, to understand and to know then how they can operate. I'm not phrasing this particularly fully because we've done a video on this, which we'll refer people to. We've also done some writings on this, which people can find in our knowledge base as well. Then it goes down to the mindset of the leader shapes the characteristics of a great leader, something else that we've created materials around, leading down to the leader then looking at the world by asking three questions repeatedly. What am I missing? Are the motivations aligned? Is there a better way? And then sometimes we slip in another element there, Tom, which is what's the time factor? How
Yeah.
much time do I have to react, to act, to do, to accomplish, to deliver results. And all of that leads down to creating the strategy. It's not just problem solving, it's identifying and exploiting an opportunity based in your vision of what you want to have happen, your mission on how you're going to accomplish that, your strategic plan, and then it gets down to the plan you actually create to execute. All of this is done within our leadership and management model, one of our tools, which we've talked about and we'll talk about a lot further. But then everything points down to the idea of value exchange. And maybe it's time we can take down the radar screen now, Tom. I think people see what we're talking about. To just take another maybe 5 minutes to go over and remind listeners to what we mean when we talk about value exchange. Most people are very familiar with the term of value proposition, that companies create a value proposition which they put into the marketplace to test and see if the marketplace sees the same value in the products. We go further. We say that a value exchange is two ways, that you put your value proposition in the marketplace and then you get value back from the marketplace. And we see that type of value exchange happening in three ways. The opportunity value exchange is it's based on the opportunity you see. Have you created value by meeting that opportunity? And are you getting payment back? Usually in the forms of money or other sorts of payments. If you're a not-for-profit, are you getting your goals met in the marketplace? That's an opportunity value exchange. We also have investment value exchanges, which is basically an ROI. You've invested in this opportunity. Are you getting the return on that investment that you have defined, however you've defined the ROI on this particular investment? And then we go one step further and saying the value exchanges need to deliver value to the institution and to the leadership. Is the institution as a whole getting the value in the marketplace as it defines that the institution wants, whether that's increased market share or increased ability to deliver on strategy or increased ability to develop relationships and so forth. In terms of leadership, are you attracting the people because of the quality of the leadership and so forth and so forth? We go into these three value exchanges in great detail. I was about to say excruciating, but not quite that, in great detail in some of our videos. So our viewers can explore these topics if they want. A very important point that we don't always make is that these value exchanges in the digital age are really the only way to scale a business, because scaling comes from the marketplace. So you've got to get the reaction from the marketplace to scale. That the value exchanges or creating the value exchanges just maximizes the work that you're doing as an organization and maximizes the results you can get. Obviously, all built around the opportunity. And another important point is that they all three of the value exchanges build on each other. If you create a solid opportunity value exchange that builds the institutional value exchange, even while it's delivering the ROI and so forth. And this is just a massive a massive mandate, massive responsibility for the leader. And maybe this is the point, Tom, where I'll take a breath and let you take over and discuss this massive responsibility of the leader.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So, whenever conditions are change, as we're experiencing right now in the world, especially, just timely, we're experiencing it here in the United States, no matter what the change would be, it causes a sense of disruption beyond the disruption that may already exist, or the disorganization or the feeling of disruption or so forth. And we're experiencing that in the business world here in the United States, in the political world, also in the geopolitical world. And so it's kind of reaching a height. And at these times is when it's really critical that we as leaders, and you and I do this. We actually spent another hour on it this morning very early, and we do it almost every day. We try to reposition, evaluate what's going on, reposition to maintain relevance, and to provide the right value we think to position to help people trying to do this themselves, right? How do you do this? And we think it's time that we all take a hard look at this thing you just pointed out, the game we're in this point, and you so well stated that the whole idea is to create an appropriate value exchange for whatever you're doing at the time, whether you're solving a problem, whether you're exploiting an opportunity, whether you're doing something for your own personal satisfaction, whatever your motivation is, that you're watching these things and you're organizing yourself around this idea of a value exchange. And that's why we call this whole thing a game, right? It's a game. We
Right.
call it the game. And that what the purpose of the game is to maximize the value exchange. And that means, and you can apply it, and this is why you and I say these thoughts apply. We try to make them abstract enough, but practical enough that they can apply to all aspects of the game. Because the game can be all the way from a profit maximization game to a growth investment long-term ROI game to a not-for-profit game that may be a not-for-profit to maximize on good works that can be invested by and scaled globally to just you personally want to do good things for certain individuals, and all you want back is the anonymous satisfaction that you've done something, and you don't want recognition. You don't even want to thank you. You don't even want the person receiving it to know that it was you. You just so, but this idea of thinking about it as a value exchange, because if you went into it and you've set the game up to be that you would get recognition in return, but you've set it up in a way that won't guarantee that, you won't be getting a maximum value exchange. You'll be disappointed. It's my point about that you and I make even jokingly about inheritance. And again, opinion of one, right? And this one has many opinions of one. I believe inheritances can be formed in many different ways. One of them is the gift, right? It's the gift. It's the unconstrained gift where you are gifting to someone and then it's theirs. And they can then do with it what they will. And the fact that you've made a choice to gift to them versus somebody else, okay, I gifted to, for example, my sister rather than I gifted to my brother. I mean, that's up to you. Now, they may not think about it that way, right? They may think about it differently. But the point is that you figured out in your own mind what you want that value exchange to be, but you also have to figure out the other side of it, that the other side has to match that too. And that's why you call and I call it a value exchange, because the value prop is, will it be well received by my sister? The answer is probably, although knowing my sister, you never know. Um, there may there may be expectations already set that are beyond what I can manage, right? But as a bad example, I'm just saying that a value prop is have I created value? Have I received the appropriate pull to my value? But you and I said no, but there's another piece to it. Then is okay, am I going to get back what I expect from that market? And that's where right now we're seeing that the waters of taking, okay, where are these things going to happen? Because with the new administration coming into the US that's going to take over for something that's been in power for a while, it means some of these conditions are going to change. I was talking with someone this morning about potentially it might open up a bit on the M&A market of the small companies just because of a change in the SEC, right? Who runs the SEC and their philosophy of M&A. Well, that has conditions on my value exchange, right? So the question then becomes, now I can exit some of these things that I couldn't exit before because I couldn't get a favorable M&A situation. Um, it also applies to investment. because now I might be more willing to invest in something that I think will exit to an M&A versus knowing that if I'm going to invest, I may have to invest in something that is not favorable to and where I have an unfavorable M&A market. So that's the context behind why you and I are going to spend another 20 minutes on this or 15 minutes on the subject, mostly because it's to remind all of us of what is this game we're playing and the fact that conditions will change, and we're facing now conditions that'll probably change economically. Now, whether they change tomorrow or whether it's going to be this time next year, we don't know. But the question is, we have to all be thinking about, okay, we've got a game that we're playing. We're playing is how do we assess the conditions in the marketplace that are relevant to us? That's the whole idea you have about the radar screen. I've got to have my mind oriented around constantly assessing what's going on that affects me, that I play in or want to play in, or will cause me to begin to play in it even if I don't want to, right? Then, how do we assess that properly? You and I believe one of the ways you can do that is by asking yourself the three questions, right? What am I missing about what's going on? And what are the motivations of all the people involved? And that's really the condition of an economic change, right? Where we're seeing the administration change, we're going to get different motivations. And what does that mean to me? And me in trying to maximize this. And then lastly, how do I deal with this? What kind of time do I have to deal with this? And is there a way to deal with this in a better way than I'm dealing with it today? Now, one thing about the value exchange that's really important that I think is important for us to think our way through is the point that the game that we're playing is a value maximization game.
Yes.
Whether that value be monetization in the near term, monetization in the long term, some form of indirect monetization, or some form of no monetization other than just satisfaction of one of the parties involved, some form of good works and the realization that they've done good works. And that value exchange, Deirdre, on the receiving side, but also on the opportunity and exploiting or dealing with that opportunity, has all the spectrum of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? All the way from I've got bills to pay and I got to get money in here to pay the bills, all the way to it's just I want the feeling of having personally done a good work, and I don't care whether the other person destroys what I gave them or not. It's that I wanted to have that recognition. So keeping our mind on the game we're playing is an optimization of max of this value exchange, however you decide to set that value exchange up. And that's the critical thing, that you today have a value exchange that you're working with. And, we take for granted that the people that we're working with and that are watching our stuff and listening to us and even just peripherally paying attention to us, they already are doing a pretty good job of that value exchange, right? We don't guess that. The question is, how do you move that value exchange as the conditions change? And what kind of capabilities can we sharpen for you or add to your toolbox to help you make sure that you are maximizing that value exchange as you define it? And this is the beauty of business. And this is why you and I love this kind of business, is because and people probably are not seeing you smiling because I think the video only records one of us at a time, but you're smiling, you're big because you love this stuff so much, which is the whole game we're playing. You decide. You decide how big that radar screen is. You decide where you're focused. You decide what the rules of the game are. And then it's a maximization of whatever the conditions are you've set up. And that's what's so beautiful. And in order for those to work, you have to have conditions like we have especially in the United States, and we have in other markets around the world. I am out of breath, Deirdre. So it's time for you to take over here. Sorry, I took a big breath.
No, very good. And just the way you left it, though, was putting the burden on the leader. And that's what we're here for. And that's the point, I think, of this whole video. It's a reminder of what this Navigate the Now initiative is. It's that we don't see that leaders are getting the help and support they need from what's out there. So we are creating the help and support that leaders need in multiple ways. That we have our videos where we talk things through. We have a lot of written materials. We're also doing something else, which I'll, two other things, which I'll mention to people. We're starting to get questions from our listeners about various aspects. And what we're doing is putting together specific playlists and commentaries for people based on topics that interest them, whether it's something that we've talked about that sparked an idea in their heads and they want our input on it, or a question that they have. So we'll encourage anyone listening to just send their questions in so that we can respond and create something that helps not only that person, but also other people in the audience. Where also you and I have been creating, over the years we've been working together, Tom, we've created a lot of tools for people to use, frameworks, lists of questions, ideas, ways of approaching things. And we're creating 2 books now to capture this material for people. The first one, which will be out before the end of this year, is a very quick one that is just a toolkit. Here are our basic tools and techniques, sort of a reminder. You need to remember something and you can just very quickly find a framework that we've mentioned or a set of questions or a tool that we've described. And so that will be out soon. We're also going to be creating over the coming year a deeper book that sets out our thinking on all of these points at a slightly more leisurely pace than we can accommodate in these videos. And so that will be out at some point in 2025 as well. I do want to make the point because you and I know that everything we talk about is tied together in one way or another. We don't just randomly drop things out there. Our radar screen captures everything and so forth. That our toolkit, our book, everything that we're talking about is captured within the framework of our organizing structure. That the book will be organized by our organizing structure. And that is the 3 aspects of assess, decide, and accomplish. The work that a leader has to accomplish in this digital age. And we have just recorded multiple videos on these 3 points, as well as published multiple articles on these points as well. And we're going to continue to come back to them. But someone wanting to know, how do I actually do an assessment? Going to our toolkit will find tools under the heading Assess right there, so that these things will be easy to find. Tom, you and I talk sometimes about specific companies, sometimes a bit in the abstract about things. And we did what I consider a pretty thorough job of discussing how Apple meets all of the value exchanges in our last video. And that's out there for people to really dig into if they want to know these. But as you said, we observe daily and we discuss daily, and we've been seeing all sorts of things out in the marketplace that may help leaders make some connections here about value exchange and how value exchange changes and how people or good leaders have to be aware of changes so they can frankly stay in business. One thing that's happening right now, and I'm not sure how many of our listeners are focusing on this, is how many fast food chains are shutting down or shutting down their locations. The last one last week, I think we heard TGI Fridays is shutting down all over the place. So think about the value exchange that they first established. They're a nice place where people can bring their children and have a good meal and have a nice time, and it doesn't cost all that much. And that value exchange worked for a long time. But the marketplace changed, customers changed. Not only the pandemic, but people's eating habits changed, the way they approached things, what they wanted from experiences. Maybe people are ordering in more, and if they're going out, they want a better experience than a fast food place. I'm not sure exactly what's happening here, but the marketplace and the economics have changed. So things are not working out for some of these fast food chains, and they're shutting down. A good leader, watching the game, playing the game well, focusing on all three of the value exchanges, should pick up when something is shifting in the marketplace so that they can respond, create a new strategy, re-articulate their vision and mission, develop and execute their plans, play the game differently and better, and thereby stay in business. We're seeing this with places like Starbucks, which is going through a whole big review of how they're operating. They're losing customers. I think I saw the statistic, 20% drop in business at Starbucks. That's got to change. And fortunately, we're starting to see that the new leaders in Starbucks are paying attention. Maybe they can pull it back. They're playing the game differently. They're recreating the value exchanges that will draw people back in. We're seeing in places like McDonald's, where they're having to refocus on pricing and packaging, recreating these value deals, value meals, children's meals, and all of these things so that they can no longer operate as they were operating a year ago. They have to see how the game is changing. Their customer base is changing. Their marketplace is changing. Customers are perceiving value differently. So if they want to maintain their value exchange, they have to start operating differently. And I'm mentioning these things, and these are things that you and I just pick up by reading the newspaper. Once you really get attuned to the concept of value exchange, you see it happening all over the place. You pick it up all over the place. And we're just going to continue to point these things out and help people see it happening so they can apply what they're learning to their own businesses. All of it supported by the tools and techniques in our Navigate the Now initiative. My turn to take a breath and turn it back over to you, Tom, here.
So Deirdre, this is the difference when you grow up in South Carolina versus growing up in Connecticut, New York, Westchester County, Fairfield County, that sort of thing. You define TGI Fridays as fast food, right?
Yeah.
So let me just tell you how I define TGI Fridays. So the hot dog stand at Tractor Supply,
Yes.
that's fast food. Okay.
Got it.
A
Okay.
good sit-down restaurant for me is In-N-Out Burger. So, or, more to the point, Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
A high-end restaurant is TGI Fridays. Right.
It
Now,
shows
dude,
the need,
I don't want to, whatever, like I said, you get to set the rules, right?
but this shows the need to know your marketplace and know your
Absolutely.
customers.
Absolutely. It does. That's the exact point, is you get to set the rules on how you want to look at the marketplace. And I made that comparison not because you just set me up to a beautiful joke, right? On TGI Fridays is fast food. But the point being that you and I could be, and we've gone even after class, we've taken people to very nice restaurants in New York, right? Which would qualify as very nice restaurants. So it's not like we don't do it. It's just how you choose in whatever game you're playing, how you choose to see it and how you see the opportunity. And the problem is, I think what's happened is that people are now, because of the way that the conditions, they saw TGI Fridays more as a special thing that you only do periodically, as opposed to going once a week or going on Wednesdays or Thursdays, right? Or whatever. And that's where you end up in trouble and not adapting to that quickly. And seeing that it was going to head that way. And I haven't studied TGI Fridays, but it is an endemic problem that we're seeing in the industry, in the restaurant industry, which is a shame. I hope everybody figures this out.
Right.
Right. I hope Starbucks gets it figured out and all these people do, because these are great businesses.
Right.
And they had a good following. So I hope they recover. But I think the whole point here, and in the last 10 minutes, Deirdre, the whole point about this is that this is about the game. And the game is constantly changing. And the whole purpose behind this, we usually take a company and take it apart. And we've mentioned a few and that's relevant to the moment. But the real issue here is that we think we have to come back to what is the point of what we're doing here, because conditions are set to change in a major way here in the United States. And as a result, it's going to have effects on a lot of things. And you have to come back to, okay, the fundamental is, what am I trying to do here with whatever I'm leading, whether it's a department or my own self as an entrepreneur, or in this world of maximizing a value exchange you already have in the marketplace. In inspecting that value exchange and saying to yourself, all right, what could happen, right? Because what you and I talk about frequently is that, some people call it a mistake plan. You and I call it a plan B, but you better have a plan that says, what if I make a mistake? What if I make a mistake on assumptions? What if I make a mistake and I've waited too long before I thought it was going to react and I waited too long, or I did it too early? This is the life of an entrepreneur. This is why this is such an interesting thing to do for a living. But it's that, what is that what is that plan that you need to be thinking about? What could happen? Not just right now, you probably don't want to change anything, right? But the question is, what is happening coming up, and what could that mean for you? And to think about it in the three ways we talk about. One is there a potential problem that's going to emerge that you could take advantage of and solve? Or is there going to be an opportunity that you can see that you could exploit? Or is there something that you want to do to help, right? For some reason, right? And you and I see what we do, we see all three.
I'm going to do something that I do on a fair number of these videos and introduce a slightly different thought at the very end, but it's a thought that it flows from what we're talking about, and it's something that we will be discussing. We have discussed, and will be discussing further. It's that what we're really talking about also is not simply knowing the marketplace. Part of the game is understanding your own entity, your own capabilities, your own ability to play the game, whether personally or through the entity that you're associated with. Too many people perceive something in the marketplace and start to plan in relation to the marketplace without taking the time to look internally to say, do we have the resources? Do we have the people? Do we have the funding? What will it cost for us to operate and do this sort of thing? What will it take us to shift into a new part of the marketplace? Do we have the ability to do this? And one of the things that you and I talk about all the time with the companies we work with and the entrepreneurs we work with is looking internally to make sure that you have the means to play the game that you want to play. Yes, define it as you want, but also make sure that you can play it as you want. And this comes through in a number of ways on our radar screen. It comes through in the three questions. What am I missing?
Yeah.
What are the motivations here? The time factor, all of these things. It comes through in the whole concept of needing a vision and a mission to drive the strategy. You and I have worked with so many clients and students who just jump immediately to the business plan, who don't take the time to think through the vision and the mission so that they are oriented toward what they're doing, so that they know so they can create and know what they have to put in place to then make it real, to deliver the results in the marketplace. It comes down to good leading, and it certainly comes down to value exchange. You can't create a value exchange if you don't have the means to do so. And this is a topic that you and I will discuss further in a video in fairly short terms, but a very important aspect of that. So I think what we've done here, Tom, is we've captured what we're doing in the Navigate the Now initiative, we've set out some of the basic points, the game, the value exchange, our radar screen. We've pointed to the resources that we have put and are putting out in the marketplace to help leaders, the people we want to help, navigate in this new digital age. What else should we cover? Or have we?
So I have a complaint to
Yes.
register. Okay. So I have a real example of a value exchange that I want to talk about because with these videos, some of our friends who know both, by the way, may know both of us really well. In this case, the person does know both of us very well. They don't take me out for lunch anymore.
Gracious.
Well, I think it's because they watch the video and they get to see you because you're across the country, right? They're here in Arizona. They don't take me out for the weekly lunch because they're getting the conversation that he and I would have. But now he's not only getting that conversation, Deirdre, he's getting you added that conversation and he doesn't have to buy lunch. So now that value exchange doesn't work for him. It works better for him. He's getting a big value exchange out of that, and I'm not.
So we have to think through how we equalize this value.
Right, exactly.
So
That's
both
exactly right.
parties get this
But
right.
there is a great example, and I'm making a joke, obviously,
Right, obviously.
but there's an example of value exchange in life. That's how it works. Now, human interactions hopefully are not that clear value exchange, right?
Right.
But the point about that being real, it is about what can you get? And that's why we're doing these videos so that we can comment and give people at least an opinion of one. Because as you and I both know, it's not always the opinion that you and I have that someone will adopt. It's really more the thought process we're using may spark when they hear it. It may
Right.
spark them to think about the situation they're dealing with in a different way and come up with a different answer, or even seeing the situation we're seeing, but coming up with a different answer. It's
Right.
just a way of getting you to think. And that's one of the beauties of when we do, and you and I both have great friendships like that, ourselves being one that we talk over almost every day, even though we rarely see each other. We talk over these things this way, and it sharpens both of our ways of dealing with these. So we encourage everybody is not just to listen to what we say, but go have these conversations with people that you trust and value that cannot necessarily give you the answers, but can sharpen your way of being able to think about the subjects you're an expert on. Because the people we deal with, for the most part, they're already experts on what they're dealing with. Or there's another group, students, which we're helping, hopefully helping to become experts on the right things so that they can go accomplish what they'd like to accomplish.
Right.
So I will give you the last word and tell you that it's always a pleasure.
It is always a pleasure, Tom. And, just talking about sharpening, that's really the value exchange that we're creating. We're creating all of these materials for the people, for our listeners, for our students, for our clients. And the value exchange back for us is seeing them get sharper at what they're doing and performing better. That's what makes both of us happy, isn't it?
It it does. That and beautiful scenery from around soon around the world.
Birch trees, absolutely.
Okay. Bye, dear. To talk to you later.
Okay, so long, Tom.